Welcome to tonight's edition of Resource PNG. In this episode, we talk exclusively to the Minister for Treasury, Don Paulier, about the extractive industry in PNG. In this interview, the Minister gives his view about the mining tax regime for the oil and mining sector.
It's my privilege to have with me today the Honourable Don Paulier, Minister for Treasury. Welcome to the show, Minister.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you to be back again.
Now, do you forecast any changes to the mining tax regime for the oil and mining sector?
I think there will be some changes, but I do not wish to preempt any changes because it's going to come from a recommendation by the tax review panel that the O'Neill Dion government appointed recently, and they've set to work. And we've also had the support of the IMF. We've also done specific review work on the extractive industry, mining and the petroleum sectors. And they will make the review available to the taxation review panel chaired by Senator Agrabogan, with members on that board who will be looking at that. I brought in very high-level experts who understand the taxation regime, not only in Papua New Guinea but also from within the region, as well as in other parts of the world. And the recommendation will be made to government around the mid this year or towards the end of the year, and we'll see what the recommended changes are. Basically, the outcome of the review that I want to see is a tax regime that is equitable, fair, and that is enabling, that can grow this sector. But not one that is creates a level playing field for all investors in the extractive industry. At the moment, I've got cause to believe that the extractive industries, the taxation regime is not so leveled, and there's some level of vagueness as to the disparities that exist. We like to look at that perspective to be probably addressed so that every investor, operator, and a business that comes into the mining or in the petroleum sector is aware of the conditions that is already in the field, in the industry, so that the government sets that guideline, very specific, very articulate, comprehensive, and also give the level of predictability for future investments in the industries. And I'm seeing there will be some changes, but the end result, the objective will be to have that very fair, equitable, very enabling environment, but a level playing field for the industries to grow and thrive on. Everybody this is a win-win for all of us, for the state, for the investor, for the landowners, and for other stakeholders in the industries.
But these may not be implemented until, say, next year?
Oh yes. What happens is in the system, when you have a review to the taxation regime, what happens is the government takes the report from the panel, and the cabinet deliberates on it under the leadership of the Prime Minister and the Deputy Prime Minister. And if the government does believe it is good in the best interest of the nation, as I envisage, then we would have that enacted, amended, or ratified through the floor of Parliament, and it becomes the tax regime for the industries in the following year. So if the reviews are made available to me before the ending down of the budget for 2014 budget this year, then I hope to incorporate some of those reviews in the budget legislations. But let me also say that the review that's been conducted will not leave the stakeholders out of the review process. In fact, the IMF technical experts, when they came in here, my instructions to them was that they engage the views and the participation of all the stakeholders in the industry, all the operators in the industry, all the investors here, the business community, and engage their views and have a comprehensive but an overarching, a broader perspective of the views involved. And I would like to see all those views incorporated in the reviews in the policy or the taxation review to the taxation review panel. Then I'd like to have a look at that before it goes to the cabinet. Right. So it's a one that's transparent, it's open, one that everybody feels free to address the issues, the challenges they face in the industries, and the rate of success and everything. So it's transparent, but it's one that everybody comes up with the facts and the information, the background to it, so that we come up with that one policy framework that is win-win for every player, including maximizing benefits for the state and our people.
Continue the interview right after this break. We continue with the Minister for Treasury, Don Poilier, who previously spoke about his forecast of changes to the mining tax regime for the oil and mining sector. We now hear which major projects have been undertaken by the national government from money flowing in from the resource sector.
Minister, you've consistently rallied for a greater state share in the extractive industries. Perhaps our viewers need to know what major projects have been initiated through the income.
See, I respect a win-win situation for everyone, but I also believe that from a Papua New Guinea's economic perspective, Papua New Guinea must not stand deprived of any possible benefit that Papua New Guinea is entitled to. In the past, if Papua New Guinea has not been benefiting from the extractive industry, maximizing its return in the best ways possible compared to the policy positions and the taxation regimes of other economies who have similar industries like ours, like in the mining and the oil sectors, or the gains from equity participation or from royalty, landowner participation. If there are other economies around us who've been benefiting in a bigger way and Papua New Guinea is lost on those, then I sit back and realize the factors that have attributed to Papua New Guinea's losing in its possible benefits. And then we ask our questions, well, what are these factors? If there's some justifiable factors, that has led to Papua New Guinea not gaining as much as it should, then we say, well, those things that we can understand, establish understanding, as how we can improve to maximize on that line or stream of benefit. Yeah. So I really think that Papua New Guinea has got to be done fairly by every stakeholder involved in the business. But on the same side, I would like to see the investor, that investors to develop Papua New Guinea's resources, like in the mining industry or in the petroleum industry. They too, they've got an interest that we cannot overlook because they're putting up the capital. It's a huge capital business. It's a huge high-risk business also. some of the huge amounts of money that is spent in the sunk cost. And if you do not find the mineral or the petroleum, it's very, very risky. It's a risky venture that we'll go into. So Papua New Guinea cannot be unfair in overlooking the business interests that are involved.
That's right.
But then you look at the Papua New Guinea landowners. Our landowners, we've got to make sure that the extractive project, whatever it may be, whether it's a petroleum or whether it's a mining that is on the soil, they've lived in the soil for thousands of years. They've been there all this time. There's an opportunity that modernization has brought about for them to benefit from, so they can change and transform their ways of living. How best can we manage them and manage the processes that go to them to have a positive effect or impact on their lives? That's also very important. So it's not a task that is entirely, solely responsibility of the government of PNG or the Prime Minister Peter O'Neill or the government, but it also must be responsible of the developer, other stakeholders, the investors that come in, and also the responsibility of the local landowners and the leadership at the local level. So we maximize Papua New Guinea's gains without encroaching on the rights of the investor that comes in to put investment, so that they also earn a return on their investment without affecting and belittling the efforts of other stakeholders involved in the process, because they too are very important. So that's why you've heard me advocating about Papua New Guinea has got to maximize benefits that comes to Papua New Guinea from the extractive industry.
I think our viewers need to know what large projects have been initiated by gains from extractive industry revenue.
Let me just go through some of this project. I was part of the Somali government before, and I was at one stage Deputy Prime Minister to Sir Michael, Grand Chief Sir Michael, when he was the Prime Minister. And Minister of Mining then was Sam Akotoy. At that time, to be honest, at that time the interest to invest in Papua New Guinea was not there. Investors never wanted to come to Papua New Guinea invest in whatever area because of the recession that we experienced, that Papua New Guinea had gone through 1990s to the 2000s and so forth. So we brought about the Ramon Nickel project that came on and gave a 10-year a tax holiday. And we created a tax regime to attract the mining industry investors into Papua New Guinea. And I think we have seen some investors coming in as a result. At the moment you look back to some of these incentives and say, oh, it's not a good incentive. It's easy to say that now because the situation now is not like the situation in the past. To be honest, in the past, we were desperate to get investors into Papua New Guinea, and so you had programs like the Ramon Nickel. So the incentive of giving 10 years holiday tax-free kind of lured in an investor to come and invest in a low-cost, low-priced a mineral. Similarly, but then when the government developed that the mining policy, attracted other miners to come in of various sizes. And Octary Mine has been doing well.
Stay tuned for more discussion on projects undertaken for the national government's mining revenue. Welcome back. Tonight's episode features an exclusive interview with the Minister for Treasury, Honourable Don Paulier. So far, we've discussed mining tax regimes for the extractive industry, and we'll continue discussions about projects undertaken by the national government's mining revenue. We've heard about Octedy Mine. Let's hear about what Lihir has been contributing.
By the way, at Lihir, the gold mine has not been doing so well. They couldn't pay any dividends or any forms of taxation income to government because of their cost structure or their operational costs were high and did not become a profitable operations. So we never so much, but recently they've been paying some revenue, and I value that. And also you've got Porgera Gold Mine and others, they've been there already. But really in the areas of mining industry, they're very small scale mining, like in the Hidden Valley, in Morobe, Yandera. It's some work is ongoing there in Yandera mine. Mankara has been continuing to be a alluvial mining. So we haven't really seen a increase in some major mine PNG. Also, there's been some mining prospects and exploration going on for some time. The major discoveries has been the Wafi Golpu by the Morobe Mining Joint Venture in joint venture partnership of the Harmony Gold, South Africa, and Newcrest of Australia. And that's going to be a big mine. I think it's going to be a ExxonMobil type, LNG one project type project in the mining industry. But at the moment, the tentative time schedule is that you might have production coming on stream in 2019. But the works and the initial stage of works have already taken place, and they're working on that. So really, in the mining industry, we see some explorations and there's some work coming up. So we are the government is yet to make some, like taking ownership in terms of equity, participation in some of those projects. So you see Wafi Gold was ongoing. Now in the petroleum sector, you've got the Inter-Oil project, that is the Antelope, the Elk Antelope project, that's in Gulf of Papua. And that was the one that gave us a lot of hope, but we've lost 3 years. For whatever reason, we have just lost 3 years. And from the state's perspective, or from my perspective as treasurer, who is responsible for the fiscal side of the project, 3 years has been lost, and we like to see.
That's 3 years of revenue.
No,
Yes? No,
of the project for the project progressing into the implementation, and we hope that the Inter-Oil does come up with some possible way forward within the conditions of the project agreement. The Minister of Petroleum has done an excellent job by consistently maintaining the conditions of the project agreement, which is a very good thing, because Papua New Guinea cannot change its goalpost. We must be fair to every other investor while giving respect for investors who have been in the country, like Inter-Oil, they've been here, which is a good thing, but also the benefit must be given to the state that all investors and with the state have to live by the conditions of the project agreement. And I hope that within the context of the project agreement, some decisions will be made soon. Prime Minister's made some announcement, and I hope the announcements bear some fruition through the assessment process. And that's the next project that we see in terms of the petroleum sector. The others that are still there, like Extractor, that's a Mount Freedom mine in the mining industry, and you've got the Stanley Gas project, very strong position in the discoveries they're doing there, and the business plan they have. But I see them in the medium term and in the long term, they're coming on board. So, and Bougainville, I hope that the underlying issues that are there, those issues that led to the crisis, and other outstanding issues that needs to be addressed are also addressed by all of our authorities on the ground, under the leadership of the O'Neill Dion government, as well as the leadership of President John Momis. So we see mining activities going back into the autonomous region of Bougainville. So this is the overall perspective that we can see. In other words, what I'm telling you is that there's not been any major growth in the mining or in the petroleum sectors. In fact, we've been declining by 5% over the last 10 years. So what I am putting my eye on is the current LNG project, the ExxonMobil project, and the Wafi Golpu, and the Inter-Oil. Okay, those ones that I am seeing that we can tangibly develop to some projects as soon as possible in the next medium term. In the Inter-Oil project, we have lost 3 years, and we have to catch up on that. We need not lose more time. But Manfreda and the others that I've talked about, Andera, the others, Ramon Nickel is already going into production, but he will have no income to the state for the next 10 years. But this activity is going, that's probably creating some employment and so forth. So the economic perspective from the sector is that we should not rely on the mining and the petroleum sector. We must develop our agriculture. And I told you earlier on, Ania, that I would like to see impact agriculture programs in the same modeling of the New Britain oil palm in the rest of Papua New Guinea. So we've got to now start to go into something more sustainable than something that is not sustainable.
We'll have more when we return. Thanks for staying with us on the show. The autonomous Bougainville government has announced that its draft mining legislation is a world-first attempt to recognize customary rights to mineral resources. Minister for Treasury Don Poilier tells us whether the national government finds this legislation acceptable and how this may affect other resource projects in other provinces.
Autonomous region of Bougainville, in their new mining policies, have given ownership of the public stake, if you will, to the landowners and to the provincial government. Is that an acceptable policy to the national government?
Really, I have not received any report of that decision, but the autonomous region of Bougainville giving the ownership of the resources fully to the landowners and to the provincial government. However, to say, let's give ownership to our people, which is a wonderful thing. That's the end result that we like to see. On the other side of the coin is, when do we do that? Is it practically possible, easy to do that now? Or do we do that under a government policy rather than just looking at the extractive industry policy? Can you look at an overarching government or country policy of autonomy? These are the questions that we need to ask. I believe in giving autonomy to provincial governments of Papua New Guinea, because I like us to create individual provincial economies. All provinces of Papua New Guinea, 22 provinces, must develop their own provincial economies and local economies. It's very important. But how do we do that? They've got a business. They must be given the flexibility to do business. They must be given the flexibility and the power to generate income for themselves, to manage some resources, to make decisions on financial matters, and have their own budgets that they can deliver, and they can and implement programs on the ground without continually relying on the grants of national government or support from the national government all the time. We must start that kind of process now. But whether to giving the all ownership of resources to landowners at the current stage is it's a question that we have to filter it through carefully, look at the pros and cons about it. Because let me put it this way: the country's economy now the size of the economy is 33 billion kina. As per our budget strategy, we like to grow our economy to 58 billion kina in 2017. By the end of the 5-year period, we like to grow the country's economy from 33 billion to 58 billion. And we have focused our revenue and how to distribute the revenues for those growth areas, to how to grow them, take into consideration the current the policies which we have in the extractive industry. If we immediately change that, my view is that we will cause a lot of confusion and disarray in an already vague situation. Vague situation meaning that we've got to give full autonomy to provincial governments to generate their revenue and to have financial powers, the financial powers that they have, independent of the national government, independent of relying on national government grants. Those decisions we haven't made yet. So if we're talking about people owning the resources fully, then I'm seeing in that perspective, that overarching perspective of giving autonomy to those provinces. But those decisions are ones that we've got to carefully articulate and apply for all provinces, and there's got to be this decision that's got to be made, because if you don't have the decisions and the structures in place, you don't have a strong economy in place, and you come up with all these interventions without having a very strong foundation, structure and system, a policy based on a policy in place, then what you'll have is you'll have everything done unmanaged, uncontrolled. It's good if people have it. People might not have the capacity to manage it themselves. And a situation where public service doesn't even have the capacity to manage other easy things will complicate the situation, and then you will find our resources, the noble ideas will tend to haunt us. And therefore I think a much proper debate and thought has got to be given into these very important and sensitive areas. I support we give autonomy to the provinces and so forth, and the ownership of resources could become part of that autonomy policy, but it must come at a time Papua New Guinea has a strong economy that can support that. Because the national government will continue to play a very important role. Provincial governments, they don't have the capacity to, as much as they try, some will succeed, like Eastern Britain, I think they will do better. Maybe New Ireland, maybe Eastern Islands and Western Islands, maybe Southern Islands and Ella. Western Province is a huge province, but they might. So you look at all these provinces, the others, they can't. Chimbus, I don't think they might. Juwaka, they won't. It will take time for them to build these capabilities of economic foundations before you give them that financial autonomy or making people own. But you've got to have that foundation created for them in the first instance before they come on stream to making decisions. So I think we're going to create a policy that is overarching on these perspectives, and then you build that the other policies like the extractive industry policies and the other industry policies into how the provincial governments can function independently with some autonomy, level of autonomy, especially in financial matters.
More after the break. In this segment, Minister Don Pullier talks about his support for provinces to have more autonomy and the real benefits derived from autonomous rule and how that may affect the national government.
Wondering, on the one hand, if you're advocating for a state's greater share, and then you're also talking about autonomy to each province, might that not diminish the national government's function within the extractive industry at the provincial level?
See, immediately we should not rush into making decisions that will create more and more confusion and more problems in Papua New Guinea. What I'm saying is I'm saying two things. First, I'm saying I think we've got to allow people to take ownership to their inner destiny. You give that on autonomy powers, especially financial autonomy powers, to the provinces. You don't do it to all the provinces at once. You select provinces and you do that.
According to their capacity,
That's my next point.
Right.
So you give autonomy, that's the first thing. There's a policy, an overarching policy that looks at all those issues of giving autonomy power to the provinces and the people. The second issue I'm raising is the timing of when you give such powers to which province, and then you manage those carefully. At the same time, you have got to grow the country's economy. With the country's economy growing, driven by the national government, you'll find provincial governments will not have that ease of growing their own economies. Because Papua New Guinea is not an efficient economy. We've got difficulties, the challenges there. Our transportation systems are not efficient, effective enough. So the national government will continue to play a very important role. That's where the national government will not want to diminish the revenue base from the extractive industry and other areas. So the timing of when we give that such an autonomy where the people will own their resources, it's a matter of time. I do not think that we should immediately say, let's give ownership to the people right now. The national government needs the income from all those resources to grow a national economy. But at the same time, the government must do an autonomy policy, say, well, this province is ready. Let's give them the autonomy powers, financial powers. So you build them up, strengthen them, create your own economy. Okay, then after a certain time period, you find another province becoming ready. Then you give them autonomy power. And if that province has got extractive interests in mind and all that there, okay. It's part of their income. Or we can say, rather than giving everything fully to them, let's now give some directly to them. Rather than getting everything into the consolidated revenue, we might say, okay, 50% goes to the provincial government, then autonomous region. 50% comes to national purse. Because I am responsible to grow the other provinces as well, not just this province, the other provinces. If I just allow the people in one province to just get everything there, then you see the national purse is staffing. What do I do with the other provinces who do not have the rich mineral resources like mine and like petroleum? I've got a difficulty at the national level. As trust, it's difficult for me to look after the other provinces because you are marginalizing my income. But what I'm saying is, we'd like to give them autonomy, but which provinces? Those got a capacity to grow and create a local economy, we support them. And we may not give them full ownership to all the resources. We might say, okay, let's give them 50-50, or give them 70, and 30 comes to the national government. So you still have that national focus on the other province and you grow them. As one strengthens, you grow the other. As one strengthens, you grow the other. So they're growing, and then they, in turn, support the national economy by the taxation and other revenues that I get from that province that have given them some level of autonomy. And then later, you say, okay, good, you're full control of yourself. You're going to own the resources. Your people are going to have the resources. The provincial government on the resources. You don't have to pay anything to the national government. You now legislate and you exist as your own autonomous province. because by then the national government will have a larger, a sound economy, a broader base for economic growth, revenue base for the country. It will be strong by then. At the moment we are not. At the moment we are not. Your national purse needs the money to make sure that everybody grows equitably or strengthen those that are growing, whilst babysitting and growing the others that are not as advantaged as the other provinces that have the mineral resources. So my question is one of autonomy, but scale it over time.
We continue with Minister Pollier after the break. As we wrap up the interview with Minister Don Pollier, we get his overall opinion of land ownership legislation in resource projects.
Minister, do you think landowners should have greater ownership than is currently allowed in the legislation?
Yeah, landowners should have greater ownership. And the size of ownership should be the increase in the increment to ownership by landowners should be paced out over time. Because you've got to build a capacity in landowners. You've got to create investment vehicles for landowners that do sound business investments for landowners. You've got to also train and skill the landowners, our people. It's a very, very important task. Those things we've got to do. Because my experience is that even the current regime, there's some benefit that goes to landowners. But what has happened? The funds have not been managed well. And landowners are still in dire need of services, of benefits to them that can sustain their livelihood. If you look down the history of Papua New Guinea, how much money has gone down to at least some of those landowners, groups and so forth, and you compare with the practical result on the ground, it's quite saddening. And you don't blame the landowners because they need the skills, they need the structures to help them, they need investments. And those are done by experts in the industry. And I think what we've had is we have got a very quick, abrupt development of projects, and the people have not been so ready, and we have imposed on them intensive and frequent change, knowing how to manage all money when they're not prepared for that, and I think we've seen so many going to misuse. So I would like to see landowners given more ownership in their resources, but we prepare them, we train them, we skill them, and then we improve the ownership to them over time, as and when we see the capacity build up. And for the time being, we've got to say we've got to do it for the national government's got to do for the landowners, but the national government's got to be very prudent, do it properly. The systems must deliver for the landowners.
In what way would you like to see the resources sector work a lot more closer with the national government to deliver higher standards for the country?
Well, I think a closer interaction between the government and the resource sector is very important. The resource sector is very vital for Papua New Guinea's growth, especially in the areas of converting the proceeds from the resource sector, non-renewable resource sector, especially to growing the renewable sector in agriculture and tourism, infrastructure development, providing social services is very important, very vital. And therefore, adding a closer, cohesive working relationship between the government and the resource sector is paramount. The second is that the taxation regime, the tax position, the tax conditions of Papua New Guinea has got to be attractive, but also responsible enough that creates a level playing field for the extractive industry, the resource sector, to enjoy their business, but also pay their thanks to the Papua New Guinea people through the government in that taxation, equitable taxation regime. So the Chamber of Mine and Petroleum, it's very paramount that they work closely with the institutions of government under the leadership of the Minister for Mine and also Minister for the Petroleum and Energy, Minister Duma and Minister Byron Chen. It's important for the industry to work with the ministers with a common view, that is that they continue to create, continue to explore, continue to establish a win-win situation for Papua New Guinea as well as for the investments. And the need for the Prime Minister and the business community, and even for the fiscal side, my side from Treasury, we've got to work in a closer, in more closer interactions, so that we understand there's a workmanship that we need to create. We do not need to work in isolation. We must have the approach of partnership in this approach. And also in the mining and extractive industry, the need for both the government and the extractive industry to be transparent in every conduct of business in Papua New Guinea is also very paramount. And I have the opportunity, the privilege of representing Papua New Guinea in a extractive industry transparency initiative conference in Sydney recently, in which over 60 countries and over many NGOs and companies and stakeholders are participating to ensure that we comply to the standard of transparency in the extractive industry, where the mining industry, the petroleum industry, there's proper audits, where the contracts that we go into, the agreements the state signs with investors are transparent. They are publicized, they're clear, they are articulated to the people of Papua New Guinea and to the stakeholders, to everyone. So we know that the extractive industry is one that is not just doing its business, but also as a care in disseminating vital information to the people who own those resources, to show them as to how much we're extracting out of the land, how much revenue we are collecting from it, how much is being paid into the government on behalf of the people, how much are we paying back to the people directly. So then we know what and the scope of work that entails from these proceeds that we get from this extractive industry, and we can say we're putting it to good use, applying them to tangible benefit, and the outcomes are this and this and this. I'm proud to say that in Papua New Guinea we've got a high standard of transparency in that regard. There are other areas that need to be improved, and we have to do that. So the government and the investors, they approach each other and they work as a team in a very strong, good workmanship to make sure the benefits that from the mining and the petroleum sector benefits all parties in a transparent manner. So this is the way forward. In anything we do, I think we've got to work together as partners and have that culture of workmanship, partnership, strategic alliances developed to work together. We've got to change the old traditional mindset of working as a boss, working as the one that imposes others to do things. We've got to now change that mindset to working as a people at the equal level, as partners, working side by side to harvest, to invest and to harvest a return that then we can then use and say, what are the best ways that we can apply this resource, the proceeds, to the benefit of our people in a sustainable manner. So this is really what Papua New Guinea government and the investments must do, and I think we are seeing that, and we hope that we continue to forge the strength of partnership with the resource sector, so we grow, and we create a win-win. That one doesn't overlooks the rights of the other, but we all maximize our gains.
That ends another edition of Resource PNG. For any comments or queries, do email us on this address, resourcepng@mtv.com.pg, or to find out more, check MTV online. That's www.mtv.com.pg, and go to our Resource PNG page. Until another edition of Resource PNG, have a pleasant evening.